Imagine walking into a Kentucky Fried Chicken on a quiet afternoon. The smell of crispy fried chicken fills the air, families chatter over buckets of wings, and the hum of fryers sets the background rhythm. Nothing unusual until the door swings open and in walks none other than former President Donald J. Trump. Heads turn, conversations pause, and the room falls into stunned silence. But what happened next wasn't about politics, wealth, or power. It was about a humble farmer named Henry Dawson, who sat quietly at the corner table with a plate of mashed potatoes. A man who would soon stun the entire restaurant and even Donald Trump himself with a refusal no one saw coming. Why would an ordinary farmer say no to Donald Trump? And why did his answer leave grown men and women speechless, their eyes wet with tears? Stay with me, because this is not just a story about politics. It's a story about love, dignity, and unshakable promises that reach into the heart of what it means to be American. Henry Dawson wasn't the kind of man you'd notice in a crowd. He was simple, with weathered hands from decades of working the soil in rural Kentucky. His clothes always carried the faint smell of earth, hay, and diesel. People in town knew him as the kind of farmer who would give you the shirt off his back, even when his own closet was nearly empty. That day, Henry came to KFC not because it was fancy, but because it was his ritual. Every Wednesday after tending to his cattle, he'd drive into town, park his dusty old Ford truck outside, and order the same thing: 2 pieces of fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, and a biscuit. He'd sit in the corner, bow his head in prayer, and eat slowly, thinking about his late wife, Margaret. For Henry, this wasn't just a meal, it was a memory. Margaret loved KFC. Back when money was tight, their Friday date night was nothing more than splitting a family bucket of fried chicken in the front seat of the truck, listening to old country songs on the radio. And even after she passed away, Henry kept the tradition alive, not out of hunger, but out of love and loyalty. That Wednesday, however, was no ordinary day. Just as Henry lifted his fork, the door burst open, and in walked a man who needed no introduction. Tall, confident, unmistakable hair Donald Trump, surrounded by 2 Secret Service agents who scanned the room before taking their positions. The restaurant froze. Phones came out. Whispers filled the air. People nudged each other. That's him. It's really Trump. But Henry? He just kept eating, dipping his biscuit into the gravy. He wasn't rude. He just wasn't the kind of man to make a fuss. Trump, noticing the commotion, scanned the room and smiled his trademark smile. And then of all the people there, he noticed Henry. Something about the farmer sitting calmly in the corner drew Trump's attention. While others were gawking, Henry was the only one who acted like nothing had changed.
Trump walked over, pulling out the chair across from Henry without waiting for permission. "Well now," Trump said, his voice cutting through the silence, "you look like a man who knows good chicken when he sees it." The room chuckled nervously. Henry looked up, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and replied simply, "Yes, sir. Been coming here every week for years." There was no flattery, no fear, just calm honesty. Trump leaned in, intrigued. They talked about farming, about weather, about hard work. And then Trump did something no one expected. He made Henry an offer. Scene 4, the offer. Trump said, "Henry, I like you. You're honest. You're hardworking. How about this? I'll buy your farm today. Full cash offer. More money than you've ever seen. You can retire, live comfortably, never have to worry again. What do you say?" The room went dead quiet. People gasped. Here was a chance of a lifetime. Who wouldn't say yes to Donald Trump offering to buy them out, to give them wealth beyond imagination? All eyes turned to Henry, and that's when he shocked the world. Scene 5, the refusal. Henry shook his head slowly. "Thank you, Mr. President, but no." The words hung in the air like thunder. Trump raised his eyebrows. "No, you mean to tell me you're turning this down? Why on earth would you do that?" Henry took a deep breath, and with a voice steady but filled with emotion, he explained, "This farm isn't just land. It isn't just cattle or crops. It's a promise I made to my late wife, Margaret. She loved this place more than anything. When she was sick, she made me swear I'd keep it alive, no matter what. This farm is my heart, my history, my love story. And sir, there isn't enough money in the world to make me break that promise." Silence. Pure, heavy silence.
The people in the KFC didn't just hear Henry's words, they felt them. His refusal wasn't about money, politics, or pride. It was about something deeper. Something every American in that room understood. The power of promises, of roots, of love that endures beyond death. Trump leaned back, studying the farmer. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. He just nodded, quietly, almost respectfully. And then, something extraordinary happened. Trump stood up, turned to the crowd, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this man Henry Dawson just taught us all something more valuable than money. He showed us that love, loyalty, and dignity are worth more than gold." Remember this moment. Scene 7. The aftermath from that day forward. Henry Dawson became somewhat of a legend in his town. Not because he turned down Trump's money, but because he reminded everyone of what really matters. The story spread across social media, across news channels, across kitchen tables in homes all over America. People didn't just see a farmer. They saw themselves, the values their grandparents taught them, the promises whispered in quiet bedrooms, the kind of love that can't be bought. And for Henry, nothing changed. He kept farming, kept visiting KFC every Wednesday, kept living the life he promised Margaret he would. But whenever strangers came up to him and asked, "Are you the man who said no to Trump?" Henry would just smile and reply, "I'm just a man who kept his word," ending the emotional resolution. And maybe that's the point of this whole story. In a world where wealth, fame, and power often steal the spotlight, a humble farmer in a Kentucky Fried Chicken reminded us of something we often forget. The greatest treasures in life aren't bought with money. They're kept alive with love, loyalty, and the promises we refuse to break. So, the next time you sit down for a meal, maybe even at a KFC, remember Henry Dawson. Remember that sometimes the most powerful word you can say is no, when saying yes would mean betraying who you are and who you love. Because in the end, money fades, fame fades, but promises last forever. Call to action for viewers: if Henry Dawson's story touched your heart today, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of what really matters.